Hi, I'm Graham Blackburn, and this is Traditional Woodworking by Hand. And today I'm going to show you how to make a mortise and tenon joint that will never come apart. So here is the window frame that we demonstrated making in a previous episode. And as you can see, the various parts are all held together by mortise and tenon joints. Now, there are different ways of making sure that mortise and tenon joints stay together. You can glue them, you can do something called fox wedging, you can make them through and wedged, but one of the oldest ways of making sure that mortise and tenon joints are tight and stay tight is to use the draw boring method. Here is a picture of a throne that was made in 1364. Actually, this is a copy that I made of it, but the original one was made in 1364. And when I was allowed to actually touch this, I was astonished to discover how firm it was. And the reason was that it hadn't been glued. There's no glue that would have lasted from 1634, 1364, whenever it was, but because all the joints had been drawbored, just like we're going to do today. So here is the window frame that we demonstrated a few episodes ago, and we're going to draw bore one of the joints. This is a mortise and tenon joint. This is the mortise and this is the tenon. The first thing to do is to make sure that the mortise is the same depth, and you can see that it's almost 1.5 inches all the way across from side to side, and that the tenon is a little shorter. As you can see here, it's considerably shorter. It's 1/8 of an inch shorter than an inch. So there's plenty of room to draw bore this tenon into the mortise. So how do we go about doing that? Well, the first thing is to bore a hole all the way through the mortise. And the way to do that is we simply secure the workpiece using our holdfast, and taking a brace and bit. In this case, the bit is an auger bit, and it's the same diameter as the pin that we're going to use to insert through the joint, right? So we've marked the place that's just a little way in, and we bore very carefully all the way through the mortise. When we think we're a little way through the other side, it's always a good practice to turn the wood over and finish the boring from the other side to prevent the drill bit from splintering the wood out. So we put the point of the bit in the hole and finish the boring. There we go. We now have a hole all the way through the mortise. Clean this out a little bit, and now we insert the tenon into the mortise. We insert it as tightly as we can, and then we take an awl, or you could use a pencil or anything pointed, and you push this through the hole and you make a mark on the tenon approximately in the center of where it fits in. Now all that needs to be done, as we take this apart, is to bore a matching hole in here. But the trick, and this is why it's called draw boring, is to bore the hole that we bored in here a little closer to the shoulder. So if I take a pencil and I can make a little mark just a little closer, like that, and maybe give it a start by actually using the awl, I can now bore my hole through the tenon. Using the same bit and the same brace, I make sure that I'm starting this hole just a little closer to the shoulder than the hole was in the other one. This time it doesn't matter if it pushes out the other side, doesn't take too long. And then we get all the way through and going nice and slowly so as not to make a mess of anything. And there it is. Now all I have to do is to insert the tenon into the mortise and punch in a pin. Traditionally, the pin would have been made from a square piece of stock that then had the corners tapered off, so it was kind of octagonal and it would be a little thinner on one side. But since this is a relatively small mortise and tenon, all that I really need to do is to put the pin in the vise and using a dowel pointer, cunning little device that you can find, give it a few turns here. And what that does is just to chamfer the end of the pin. Now all that remains to be done, and I'm positioning this over a dog hole, is to put this in and drive it all the way through. And because the hole in this was further back than the hole here from the joint, driving the pin in has the effect of drawing the joint together. So now we have a completely tight joint that won't come apart, and all that's necessary now is to plane this or saw this off, and we've got a joint that is permanently fixed, has drawn the two pieces tightly together, and will stay that way for at least 500 years, just like the joints in this throne that was built in 1364 did. Hope you like that. We're going to talk about more ways of how to secure mortise and tenon joints, such as through mortise and tenons, foxed mortise and tenons, and even blind foxed mortise and tenons. But it's important to know how to put joints together that won't come apart and that don't rely on glue. I'd like to mention something else here. It's true that in the modern age we now have glues that are supposedly good forever, magic glue, but that's not a good thing with wood, because very often you need to disassemble pieces made of wood, and if you've got something like magic glue, they never come apart, you end up destroying the piece. It's easier to use, traditionally it was easier to use hide glue that you could melt and disassemble. Anyway, here we have a draw board mortise and tenon. If you want to see the other examples, don't forget, hit the subscribe button, and the little like button that comes up afterwards. And feel free to keep writing to me and I'll answer all your comments. And good luck with your mortise and tenons. Thank you.